Welcome to this edition of Moderator Training for 24 Hours of Pass. This training will provide a quick overview of both the event itself and the webinar platform. 24 Hours of Pass is conducted using the GoToWebinar platform. Audio is computer-based, so there is no dial-in option. Please ensure that you wear a headset for your audio. This is very important for sound quality and to prevent echoes. Also, please join us in the session 20 to 30 minutes prior to the start time. There will be a Pass support person waiting to test your audio and to troubleshoot any issues. Finally, if you do have any urgent questions on the day of the event, please contact us at 24hrs@sequelpass.org. This email will be received by the entire 24 Hours of Pass team and will allow us to respond more quickly to your question. The role of the moderator starts with kicking off the session and welcoming the attendees. You're also going to walk through a few slides that will promote the upcoming Pass Summit, thank our sponsor, and introduce the speaker. This should take about 3 minutes, 5 at the most. We really want to give the speaker as much time as possible to deliver their content, so we don't want the moderator introduction to take too much time. Throughout the session, you're going to manage the Q&A from the attendees and help to keep the speaker on time. Now, you might find if the speaker is running late that you actually need to unmute yourself to communicate with them, and that's okay. Each session runs for an hour from start to finish, and that starts with the moderator kicking it off and then transitions into the speaker. Keep an eye on the speaker's audio throughout the session. If you do notice any issues, again, you may need to unmute yourself to speak to the speaker. One of the things that we find is occasionally if the speaker's internet connection isn't great, we may turn off their webcam if they're using it, and that will just dedicate more of their bandwidth to their audio. As you're managing the Q&A throughout the session, please feel free to answer simple questions if you know the answer, and save the rest to the end of the session, at which time you'll read them aloud to the speaker. We want to make sure we leave a good amount of time for this Q&A, so it's important that the speaker wraps up at about quarter to the hour. Also, we like the sessions themselves to end just a couple of minutes before the top of the hour. What this does is it allows time for the attendees to move out of that session and into the next one. Now, keep in mind that this is 24 consecutive webinars, so we really want to create a smooth experience across the entire event. If you're wondering what else you can do leading up to the event, please feel free to blog or tweet to help promote this edition of 24 Hours of Pass. You can also follow us at #Pass24Hop on Twitter, and please feel free to join in the conversation. Once the recordings are available, you can also share those links. They will be available about a week after the event. Anything you can do to help us to start and finish on time, we greatly appreciate. As I mentioned, it is a long event with all those back-to-back webinars, and we really want to create as smooth an attendee experience as possible. Finally, we hope you enjoy yourself. We really appreciate the time it takes to moderate one of these sessions and to participate in the training, and we couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much. That gets us to the platform. As I mentioned, we use the GoToWebinar platform. About an hour prior to the event, to your session, you're going to receive an invitation via email. This invitation will contain the link that you need to join your session. So about 20 to 30 minutes before your start time, follow that link, and we'll be waiting to test your audio and to practice the transition from the moderator back to the speaker. If you wish to get familiar with the platform in the days leading up to the event, we will send you practice sessions so that you can do that. Once you are in the session, we'll upgrade you to an organizer. Once we do, you're going to see a control panel very similar to what's on the PowerPoint here. Something that's very important is that as an organizer, you will have the ability to start the broadcast. Please do not. The Pass support person in the room will take care of starting the broadcast. So you'll notice the red bar at the top of the control panel. You may also get a pop-up message asking you if you want to start the broadcast. Just make sure that you select no, and once we're all ready to start, that Pass support person will kick off the session. Another thing to note is that attendees are muted by default, so please do not unmute them. There's likely to be many attendees, and that could create some chaos. And finally, we will also be recording the session, but the past support person will take care of that as well. We really want you to be able to focus on the slides you'll be delivering and managing that Q&A as the session starts. So as soon as you're in the session 20 to 30 minutes prior, once we make sure everything's working properly, we'll run through that transition from moderator to speaker. We find that the best experience for the attendee is if all of those slides are in one deck. So although we will send you your moderator slides in advance so that you're able to prepare, we will also attach them to the speaker's presentation. So what that means is the speaker will share their screen and simply give you keyboard and mouse control. That will allow you to move through the slides on their computer. Once you're done, they'll revoke your keyboard and mouse control, and then they can continue with their presentation. Once you've finished speaking, please mute yourself. You can do that by selecting the little green microphone to the left of what will be your name in the control panel. That's very important as we want to make sure there's no background noise while the speaker is presenting. What's really going to keep you busy throughout the session is managing the Q&A from the attendees. There is a question pane within the control panel, but you can actually click and drag that away from the control panel, which will allow you to expand it. This makes it much easier to really manage the questions as they're coming in. Again, feel free to answer simple questions. You can respond either publicly or privately to questions. What I would also recommend is, as you're getting questions, is actually to delete them as you've managed them. We can always pull a report from the back end to see all of the questions that were asked after the webinar is over. But if you have the simple questions that you answer, you can clear them off of the queue. You may also find that you get the same question 5 or 6 times. Typically what I would do in that case is I will respond just privately to that person saying, thank you for your question. I will raise it to the speaker at the end of the session, and then I'll delete the duplicate instances of those questions so that when it comes time to read the questions aloud, you just have a nice list of the questions that you're actually going to raise to the speaker. Occasionally there are many questions and the speaker doesn't have a chance to get to them. What we can do in those cases is after the webinar is over, we can send the speaker the list of questions, and many times they would like to prepare a blog to respond to those questions or some form of public communication. That works really well, but just something to note is that although we can share the list of questions with the speaker, we cannot share the list of people who asked them. So they're not able to connect with those attendees one-on-one unless the attendee reaches out to them directly. And that's just because we have to protect the information that we receive from registrants. Finally, just a few frequently asked questions. These are fairly basic, but you'll probably get at least them each a couple of times in the sessions that you moderate. The first one is I can't hear. Typically we have 1 or 2 people who can't hear and dozens or hundreds of people who can hear. So there's not a lot we can recommend other than closing competing applications, making sure they're not muted. We could also suggest that they exit and re-enter the webinar. The only risk there is GoToWebinar does have a limit of 1,000 attendees. Now we've only hit that limit once before, but if we are nearing the 1,000 mark and someone leaves the webinar to rejoin, they may find the webinar is full when they try to come back. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're giving that piece of advice. I can't see. Typically that happens during Excel demos and they can't see the detail of what's happening. But attendees will have a zoom function on their viewing pane. So near the top, there's just a simple magnifying glass that they can click on to zoom in to see what the speaker is presenting. The most common question is either, are these sessions being recorded, or when will the recordings be available? We will have the recordings out 1 week after the event, and we will send an email to all registrants letting them know that the recordings are available. So they can depend on receiving that notification from us once the recordings are there. That really wraps up the training, the moderator training for 24 hours of pass. If you do have any questions in the days leading up to the event, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And once again, thank you very much for your time and for participating in 24 hours of pass.